All right, happy to welcome on Joey Copponi to the podcast. Joey, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you having me.
So we're gonna get into some Sox talk later on, but first, before we do that, I do want to just get into your background for the people who might not know you. So just talk about like life before ITM. Just who is Joey Copponi before the fame, before the Red Sox fame?
A failed filmmaker. I was making movies and what have you. I started working for the New Hampshire Fisher Cats as a side gig to make some extra money doing some video for them, filming the games for the MILB TV stream, and cutting some highlights together and stuff. So that was my first taste working in baseball. And then I had a kid on the way, and being a failed filmmaker is not the way to make money when you have a child coming. So my son's mother correctly was like, "Hey, you should probably get a job." And I was like, "Yeah, that's a good idea." So I found, it was pretty good advice in hindsight. And so I found an opening with this company called Lumberland, who was looking for a social media content creator, and they were a baseball company. And I was like, "It's pretty perfect." So I talked to them and found out that they wanted to make like a social media empire, and they basically wanted to be Barstool. And I was like, "Oh, I can do that." So I went there, and it grew a couple million people on TikTok, and got a whole media team, and it caught the attention of Steve Peralt, who reached out, and who I think at the time, I think it's as simple as he just wanted to grow his TikTok following, and he was like, "Hey, you want to do a video together?" So we did a video together, and that's when he let me know. He's like, "Hey, I'm going to be leaving Section 10. I got an offer somewhere else."
Nice.
And you should submit an entry to get the co-host spot. And I did. And here we are. Worked with the team for a year, worked with Audacy for a year, and now over with Sports Illustrated.
So what's going through your head as all this is happening? Like, were you taking this like completely seriously, like this is what I've always wanted to do, or were you just like, if it happens, it happens, and we'll just see where it goes?
No, so I remember I was filming there's like an audition video was the first step, and I filmed that in my garage, and I was on take maybe 7 or 8, and I texted my best friend. I was like, "Dude, I got to tell you what I'm doing right now." I was like, I'm slamming beers in my garage trying to make a video. I'm sending it to Steve Peralt. Like, he told me about this opportunity and like all this, and he, shout out to my friend Jackson, gave me the pep talk of a lifetime of like, "You're like, holy shit, this is what you're supposed to be doing." I don't know if I can swear in here. Sorry. He's like, "Holy cow, you got to."
No, absolutely you can. Yeah.
Okay. He's like, "Yeah, dude, go for it. You're supposed to do this. Like, this is what you've always wanted." And went for it and thought nothing of it. And like, because I never heard anything, and ended up talking one more time, as you're familiar, and then reached out maybe a month after that because I, oddly enough, had lost my job with Lumberland, and was kind of in a pickle, and was like, "What am I going to do?" So really casually reached out to Steve as much to not sound like a beggar as I could, and I was like, "Hey man, you ever find your co-host?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll call you in a minute." And very casually was like, "Oh, I can't believe I didn't tell you." "Yeah, you got it. I didn't tell you that." He just
Classic
dropped
Steve.
like this news of a lifetime in this like, "Oh yeah, no, it's you." So
That's awesome.
yeah, it was a little surreal at the time, and also like a gift because things weren't really going my way. So it was a lot at once. It still feels really quick. It's been a season and a half, but still very weird. Running into a listener, very strange. Somebody repeats a joke back to you that you made on air. That's very strange. So it's
What has
still
that
a lot.
adjustment been like? To people seeing you in public, and now you have this new schedule where you got to record these podcasts no matter what happens in the season. Maybe like you haven't watched a game as closely today as you did yesterday, and you still got to be on at all times. So like, what's that adjustment to that lifestyle?
It is certainly an adjustment. I think at first it was. I thought I kind of had to learn like trial by fire. Like I'll just figure it out as I go.
Right.
And really quickly I realized how much of an asset the people in the industry already are. So like you have to ask people things and don't be afraid to say, "Hey, is this the way it's supposed to go?" and whatever. And early on, being the new guy in town, you get some criticism. So that was also new because on TikTok, it's like you get some pushback, but it's always like it's like a comment that says like you're an idiot, and you're like, no, you are. You know what I mean? It's
right.
You can just kind of shrug it off. But when people are like, I have listened to hours of you bearing your personality, and I do not like you. That
tough.
is it's a little weird because it's like I don't think no one's ever said that to my face. So that's interesting to just have people saying that. So in asking other people, other podcasters, other personalities, like, how do you deal with that? I think that was when I kind of really overcame it and was like, oh, okay, I can just be myself and whatever, and like you got to kind of just let go and let things play out. So that was probably the biggest adjustment early on, and now it's just realizing what you can and can't do because I didn't go to journalism school. So I think for me the hard thing is just learning what you can say, what you can't say, what's supposed to stay under wraps, like what's the best practices for giving somebody credit for things, and those are all things that like you learn along the way and people kind of give you some leeway with. But the lifestyle adjustment, man, I ran into some people this weekend who listened to the show. I've neber been great at casual social interaction, period.
I hear you, yeah.
It's weird. To anybody who ever has ran into me and thought I handled it strange, I thought that too. I didn't have the right thing to say. When people are like, I love the show, I'm like, oh, thanks, I appreciate it. And that's usually like where it ends. Because I don't have anything beyond that. So it is certainly an adjustment. Maybe in 5 years, if I'm still doing this, I'll have it down.
Yeah. Did you feel the pressure of replacing someone like, obviously, Jared Carrabis? Like, that was sort of the elephant in the room there. It's like, okay, they're breaking up Section 10, and now I got this guy to replace. Like, how was that?
I never really put it on myself that I was going to be replacing Jared. Yeah. Because it's crazy shoes to fill, When, Lennon and McCartney go their different ways, I don't think anybody, stepped into Wings and said, oh, I'm going to be the new John Lennon. Right. So I don't know if that analogy works. That might be backwards. But
sounded good to me.
I don't know who's John and who's Paul and whatever. But I don't think I put it on myself that I had to fill those shoes. I think the few interactions I had with Steve before we started recording, I was confident that like our rapport would be enough and that it would be a new brand. I think it was more that. It was like, will people adjust to this different brand? Will people expect it to be Section 10 and then be let down that it's not the same thing? Because we veer off the path and we go on our tangents or whatever, but for the most part, we stick to what's going on. And I think that's something that people loved about Section 10 is that they did do 3.5-hour episodes where they talked about, I don't know, how cars are made in Venezuela or something. They would just do whatever. Yeah. And that's just not what ITM has been. So I think there was a little bit of like waiting for people to adjust, but as far as filling shoes, it's like you gotta have realistic expectations for yourself. That's like never what I set out to do there.
What's the relationship been like with you and Steve over the last 1.5 years? Has it been easy building that chemistry? Has it been natural since the beginning? Like, what are some hurdles maybe that you had to go over? Like, walk me through that.
He's an asshole. No.
Yeah, we all know that.
Jerk.
We all know
I hate working with him. No. It's weird because at Audacy, it was like Steve was in a direct, almost like managerial role kind of thing. It was like he was a direct like supervisor to me. Yeah. So that was a very different dynamic than now because we both got let go at Audacy on the same day, and so it was like really quickly we were thrown into the same boat, and it's like we had to on our own then find this new landing spot and search through these offers and weigh them all together, and now are in a position where the success of the show is our success. So it's a lot more working together and a lot more trying to think of like what's best for the show versus at the beginning it was like I am just the new guy on board and I'm just like going along with it and whatever you want, I'll get this out here and let's do that. And now it's a lot more of us building something. So The other thing, sorry, my son, he's screaming, man. I don't know what he's screaming about. He's all good. He's fine over there. I promise you. Anybody who's like, is he ignoring the kid? He's fine. He's got apple juice. He's right around the corner.
He's good to go,
the hurdle, I think, was the first year we were partnered with the team, and that put some restrictions on you.
Right.
And now we are not partnered with the team, and that felt like overcoming a hurdle. It was like that. We thought that was so cool to have the tag that we were the official show, and then you get a taste of the reality of what it's like to be the official show.
Yeah.
And it's a lot less freeform. So
Yeah, like the promotion's probably better, right? You get better promos from the Red Sox Instagram. I saw a few of those, but as far as content, you're very limited there.
Yeah, there was early on it was sick because the first episode I got a push notification from the MLB app. It was like, check out the first episode of Inside the Monster with Alex Cora.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this? I screenshot it and it was crazy. And then a couple months go by and like without too many details, something happens and you just hear like, hey, we're not going to talk about this. You're like, that's like the story of the week. How are we not going to talk about that? Or some off the field stuff, and it's like you're very, very specifically like that stays here. As the season went on, there was just moments where the official tag became more of a hurdle than an asset. So experiencing that together and then getting the freedom from it, I think, has been really cool and has only helped like grow the show more.
Yeah. So you mentioned obviously that switch from Audacy to where you are now. It's Sports Illustrated, correct?
Yeah.
So take me through the behind the scenes of just getting that call of like, hey, by the way, this show that you just started a couple months ago. Sorry, I should say a few months ago, because you went a whole season, correct?
It was like exactly a full season. It was like March to October.
All right, so a full season's in the books. You're like, all right, on to next season. I got my momentum going. You get this call. Walk me through the behind the scenes there. What are you and Steve thinking? What's going on?
Have you ever heard of glowfish?
I'm ready to hear about it.
Okay, glowfish are like little tropical fish that like, there's pink ones, blue ones, yellow ones, green ones, orange ones, and they glow under a black light.
Okay.
I saw on TikTok these glowfish. I learned about them on TikTok, and I was like, I need to get me some glowfish, right? So I went to the store. I got some glowfish, and like I got the gravel that's like purple. It glows under the black light, and then I got like the tiki that glows under the black light, and the pirate ship, and I set up this huge tank, and I got like the water treatment stuff, and I set up the filter by myself. I spent like a whole day doing this, and gorgeous. And I set it up just so it's like across my living room from my bedroom door. So like when I'm laying in bed, I can see my glowfish across my apartment. And it's like the biggest accomplishment that I had maybe in my life. I was so proud of myself.
Sounds like it.
Right?
Yeah, sounds like it.
I wake up the next morning. And I have 20 dead glowfish.
Oh my God.
They are all dead.
That's tragic.
It's a tragedy.
That is a tragedy.
And I have a meeting that morning at 11 a.m. and I hop on and I'm going to try to spin this and just some early meeting fodder. You get on and just, how was the weekend? All that. So I get on. I'm like, crazy morning. I got these glowfish. They died. I feel like it's like a bad omen. It's so crazy. And then my boss goes, she doesn't laugh at my story.
Oh, my God.
And then says, like, Joey, so this is going to be a tough conversation. It's like, no way. The omen came true immediately.
Part of you's like, this is kind of, like, this is funny. Like, the way this worked out is fucking hilarious. But
and then
that sucks.
And then so after we got the call and whatever, I had to go fish out 20 dead fish out of my filter, just knowing, like, what are we going to do with the show?
Oh my God!
Yeah,
that's
so
unbelievable.
that's how it started there. But I'm sure you're more interested in the search itself was like, reach out to a couple of companies that are like, that we know because we hadn't publicized it yet. We hadn't done the episode yet, so we reached out to a couple of companies like, hey, just so you know, we're going to be leaving Audacy, and if you want to talk, let's talk. And then once we put it out there, we started getting more. And, companies started reaching out themselves. And one of the people we heard from was Scott Neville, works under the Sports Illustrated umbrella. And his pitch just made a ton of sense. And the freedom that he talked about, the ceiling for the show that he talked about, the accessibility to things like merch and sponsors and live opportunities. Just all those things just kind of seemed to align with what we wanted, and with minimal oversight. He was like, in reality, do what you want to do. I'm not going to tell you anything. Right. And that was just really appealing to us. And I think the SI tag was cool too, you know?
Absolutely, yeah.
So there was just a lot of things that played right, and I think it was a little bit of betting on ourselves, because like I said, it's a kind of a high ceiling kind of thing where we're in charge of what we're doing. So after, you know, a month or two of looking around, it was like, yeah, that's probably the one. And yeah, happy we made the decision. I think we made the right one.
So you think this season under this new umbrella has gone more smooth than the other season? Like, do you think you've found your groove now with this new home that you guys have?
Yeah, I mean, we put out merch before the season started. You know, last year there was none. You know, and that's
right.
That's a really small. That's a microcosm of what, you know, I'm talking about here. But that's the kind of that's the difference, is when you work with people hands on and in a small controlled environment that has a you know, maybe a corporate overlord, but that isn't, you know, directly meddling, is a lot different than working for a big company that has a whole bunch of chefs in the kitchen. And yeah, I think the show is much more free and open and honest, and we can explore a lot more things than we could before. So yeah, I
right.
totally stand by the decision. I think we made a great decision choosing SI.
Yeah, it's great. So what are some experiences over these last couple of years that you've been like, man, that is something that I am so happy that I got to experience. I would have never experienced this in my life. I know one obvious example is you guys went to the All-Star game in LA, and I remember listening to one of your episodes and believe like you guys came across guys like Bryan Cranston, guys like that, just stumbling upon Bryan Cranston must have been an unbelievable experience. So
I stumbled my way through a conversation with words fell out of my mouth. Yeah, so that was definitely up there.
So like, take me through. I guess we'll start at the All-Star game and then we'll just go from there. Like some of the cool experiences that you've had in this new role.
The All-Star game was actually the first one that came to mind, but it wasn't on the field or anything. It was, we got invited to David Ortiz's after party after the home run derby, and that was the silliest one. That was probably still the moment that I'm like, what are we doing here? Because I got to the door, and I didn't know this. In LA, there's like dress codes at clubs and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just not a club guy in general, let alone a big city club guy. So I show up to this club in LA, and I have shorts on, and the guy at the door is like, what are you doing? Like, there's no shorts. And I was like, well, that's what I'm wearing. I don't know what to tell you. And he is like, okay, well, the cover is this, and da-da-da-da-da. And Steve is like, we're on the list. And he looks and he goes, I'm so sorry.
Big time Steve.
Yeah. I was like, I didn't know there was a list. And he's like, oh, right this way. So sorry. And like brought us right in, and then went into the back room, and like the people that are there, it's crazy. You know, I think the first two people I saw when I walked in there were Chuck Liddell and Albert Pujols. And I was like, I shouldn't be here. This
what a duo.
Silly, right? Yeah, I know. Yeah, two of the biggest dudes in the world.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if I belong here. So that was one of the crazier ones. There's just some other little ones, like you know, being on field and like, you know, Chaim Bloom comes over and like knows my name. Like those ones always get me. But it's easy to get lost in it when you're doing it, you know, and be like, this is my job. This is what I got to do. Got to have an article up by this time. Got to get prepare notes on this and whatever. That you do have to like force yourself to be like, this is really cool. You know, if I was 11-year-old me wouldn't believe I'm doing this. So keeping perspective is definitely something I try to do.
So you mentioned Bloom. Who are some players that you've had, like you've built sort of a connection with over the last couple of years? Who stands out?
The big ones are like Arroyo is the glue guy of that team. I mean, I don't think that gets talked about enough, that he is just an awesome guy. He could be a broadcaster tomorrow if he wanted to, but he could also be a stand-up comedian. So I think Arroyo, he's also very, very honest, you know, like I don't have to see him every day for like, you know, when we do talk, that he'll just drop stuff that I'm like, you're trusting me with that information? You're telling me that? Okay. Jeez, man. He's really funny. He's a guy that I've been grateful to get to know. Durant is another guy. Yeah, I think he was the first player I met. I think so. And that change from, I mean, even like last spring training to now is a crazy change. Because he was hungry then, and he was upset then.
Yeah.
And now it's like he still has those attributes, but they're different. It's like he's
in a good way.
Yeah, it's like I've proven myself a little bit now, and I'm gonna keep doing it. And I know that there's at least one guy out there who doesn't believe in me yet, and I'm gonna convince him. And if he's only half convinced, I'm gonna make him fully convinced. And he's hungry in this like, yeah, I'll show you kind of way. But I've also seen him mature because obviously last year was last year, and this year he's quite different. So those two are near the top. I'll tell you the one that I didn't expect to have, maybe the strangest relationship that I had. Tommy Pham, interesting fellow.
Really?
Yeah, interesting, intimidating fellow.
How did that come about?
He came over to me and Steve. This was I don't remember when this was. This is sometime last year. He came over and asked for the shoes off Steve's feet. And I don't think...
Very casual thing to ask.
Yeah, and I don't think he was kidding. But we could never tell. And then every time I saw him after that was like the same kind of energy of like, is Tommy Pham joking? Or like, is anybody hearing this? 'Cause like should I be scared of this guy? And I think the answer is yes. I think the answer is no, he was not kidding. Yes, you should be a little scared of Tommy Pham.
That fantasy football storyline seems like a fever dream. Like that first off, that seems like it was like 10 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
And that was my real introduction into Tommy Pham's personality, and to hear that it's actually pretty accurate to who he is hilarious.
I saw somebody in my replies recently say like they should send out Tommy Pham to just smack Jock Peterson like every couple of games, like mid at bat.
Yeah.
So the commentators have to be like,
"Oh no,
here he comes!" And that's Pham's music. Yeah, that would have been nice yesterday. That would have been real nice.
Would have been nice. Would have been real nice. So we talked about those are your favorite experiences. You don't have to mention names here. You can if you want. You don't have to. Awkward experiences that maybe weren't so great with players that you have met in person. Or maybe not in person, actually. Either way. Oh, okay.
Jock Peterson.
Let's hear more about that.
Funny enough. Dude, so All-Star game last year in L.A. This is like a pretty innocuous story. So this one feels like okay to share. I'm going around shooting TikToks. I'm doing like the most low lift thing that there is to do during the media availability during the All-Star game. Because all these other reporters are getting in your face, if you're a player, they're getting in your face, and they're going, how do you feel about the trade deadline this year? Do you think that you might be moved? You were benched earlier in April. What do you think it is that early in the year that doesn't get you what you do? Well, you were an All-Star this year, but this is a down step from last year. Do you feel the effects of age? And I come over to you, and I say, what's your favorite baseball movie? Right? I'm just trying to get some clips for TikTok. So I asked everybody.
Lighten the mood.
Right. And the thing is that's great is like most guys, like Freddie Freeman, like he was like, trying real hard to answer these tough questions, but like you can see it's weighing on him a little bit.
Right.
And then I asked him that, and he lights up. And he's like, oh man, you know what movie I really loved? It's cool. It gets, the vibes changing. So I go over to Jock Peterson, who by the way has nobody around him. Nobody is waiting in line to ask Jock Peterson a question when Albert Pujols is, across the way.
Yeah.
So I go up, I'm like, 3 questions, man. What's your favorite baseball movie? And he goes, I don't think I have one. And I'm like, okay.
Electric.
Yeah, cool stuff. I forget the second one, but I was like, who's the celebrity you'd want to meet while you're in LA? And he goes, oh, jeez. And then turns to, like, I don't know if it's his agent or a friend or, like, a local reporter who's just there and starts yucking it up with them like I just didn't ask him a question. And then turns back to me like he forgot that I was there, and he goes, oh, sorry, buddy. I guess you stumped me.
Jesus.
And I almost said, buddy? Did you say buddy like I'm 9? Like dude, that's not cool. I'm the only guy talking to you. So that
that was one that, like, it wasn't
Getting
like
buddied.
this major transgression, but like I was like,
Yeah.
don't ever talk to me like that.
Getting buddied is never fun. Never mind by a Major League Baseball player when you're just trying to ask simple questions.
Yeah, totally unnecessary. And he has stupid hair, so take that, buddy.
You got him there. That's for
Roasted.
sure. So, where? Actually, I'll start here. Best interview that you've done on ITM so far. I'm putting you on the spot. Which one is it?
Oh man, it's tough because come here, man. It's tough because I know the ones that like we get the most out of, but then there's also ones that are just the most fun because.
Okay. You could pick both. I won't leave you to just one. Just you can name a couple, maybe a blend of both of those.
I always love talking to Haim. Anytime you can make Haim break and show a little bit of personality, I love that.
Yeah.
Those are maybe my favorite. But guys like Johnny Gomes, like Johnny can tell a story, dude. I think the first one with Alex Cora was probably the most fun, probably the one I'll remember the most. I mean,
Yeah.
Alex was loose, he was having fun, and it was the very first thing that we were recording. It was episode 1, and it was like, here, talk to the manager. So
Yeah.
I was pretty starstruck. That was big for me, but man, I feel like I'm forgetting a really big one. I'm really not the memory guy. There are some silly ones that we've done, like John Dowd, the guy who
I remember that
created
one.
and named Barry Bonds in the MVP 04 game.
Yeah.
That
big MVP baseball guy. That was an episode I made sure to tune into, and I recommend other people do the same because that was hilarious getting that guy on.
That was so funny. Like, we just casually brought up, like, oh, we should get him. And then, like, the next day, Steve texted me. He's like, dude, I got in touch with him. We're getting him on. So that one was fun. I'm definitely forgetting somebody big, but former players always have stories that they feel like they can share because it's been long enough. So I think like the former player is always going to be a better interview in terms of like entertainment factor than the current player.
So I find like in any interview, like if you do this long enough, you're going to have some awkward, not so great moments doing podcasting. It's just the way it is in media. I don't know whether it's podcasts, just regular journalism, anything. You being fairly new to this, what are some moments that stand out when you're recording? Again, you don't have to mention anyone by name, but just certain moments that you're just like, man, I can't believe that happened, or that was rough.
Really recently, actually, we had Salt Lamacchia on. I think I actually cut it from the interview because I was so embarrassed about how it happened. But I said something like, I asked him about being in the booth, and then I knew I was going to segue into asking him about something else, but there was never a good point for a segue, and so I got lost listening to him, and then he finished up talking, and it was just silent for a couple of seconds, and I went, no, totally, I agree, and I had no way to segue into it. It was so tough. I ended up just saying, like, dude, I got hypnotized there. Sorry. You just got me. I was just listening to you. But there's been a few of those for sure. I think the first interview that we did was with Christian Arroyo, and I didn't say much.
Yeah.
And when I watched the interview back, I realized I was staring at him the whole time. I was sitting at a table next to him in Fort Myers, and I was maybe 3 feet away from him, my eyes just burning a hole in the side of his head.
Did he ever say anything, or did he, since then he's never mentioned that? Okay, well, that's good, I guess.
Never brought it up, no. Haim one time caught me in the elevator with, like, I needed a ring light for that day, and the only one they had was, like, this pink preteen, like, TikTok starter kit ring light.
They come in those little boxes, like, with everything, yeah.
Yeah, and it had, like, butterflies all over it. Yeah, and
so
Haim caught me in the elevator with that once. That was embarrassing, but that wasn't really me flubbing. That was just me, like, hey man, I'm a serious journalist. How are you? There's a handful of them. I'm definitely forgetting them, but those are not uncommon in my life.
Yeah.
Those kind of happenings.
So where does this show go from here? What are some goals that you guys have that you want to work towards? You have a couple years in the book now, or close to 2 full seasons. What are some things you'd like to accomplish over the next season?
I think the next step, we're talking about doing a live show soon. That's one that we really want to do. That would be a cool thing to check off, because in meeting listeners, I think one of the weird things about it is that, you perform on stage. If you do music or theater or something, you see the audience and you know that what you're doing is being immediately taken in. Or if you're a failed filmmaker, maybe you've had a premiere or two where like you can see that the audience is there and engaged, or maybe not engaged, maybe on their phone the whole time because the movie stinks. And with a podcast, you're just throwing it out on Twitter and being like, here you go. And you almost
hopefully
forget,
this works.
Yeah, and you kind of forget that people actually consume it. So when somebody comes up and is like, oh, James Paxton is Canadian, I'm like, what? What? Yeah, I say that all the time. How do you know that? Oh, because you listen to the thing I put out. Yeah. So that having a live element where you can actually interact with the fans, I think is a next step for me that I want to do. But there's all sorts of places. There's room for innovation in podcasts, man, because they can get stagnant pretty quick because you are on a rigid schedule. You are talking about the same thing. In our case, always talking about the Red Sox, and you can spice it up with guests and whatever. But I think there's room for innovation and room for new things to do. We've talked about we've made some YouTube content. Want to make more of that. I'm sure the off season will lend that, and want to make some like video essays on there. Some more long form content. I think we try to spice it up with some new segments and whatever, but I think there's more room for innovation beyond that.
Any big takeaways from this job that you have, like maybe things that you didn't see coming when you took the job in the first place, that like maybe lessons you've learned over the last couple of years?
Yes, but I don't know if I have them handy.
Like off the top of your head, yeah.
You know what I think? I think the biggest thing that I've learned is, I think when you start any new profession, there's a bit of imposter syndrome that comes along with it. Even if it's slightly outside of what you were doing. If you go from working in social media to working in marketing, you're like, oh, can I do just like straight up marketing? Or you go from finance to a broker, you're like, oh, there's a whole new thing. Like, am I fit for this?
Yeah.
And with sports journalism and sports media in general, I think I've learned how important it is to just be a likable person.
Yep. Be authentic.
I thought there was so much more about, do I know the journalistic code? Do I know the unwritten rules and all that? And so much of it is being present, being friendly, being respectful, and that's how people trust you, and that's how people share things with you, and reaching out to people, which I never did before, but now you want to talk to somebody, you got a question for somebody, you ask it, you just throw it out there. You don't say, it'd be weird, I don't want to text him. You just do it.
Yep.
That's something that I've learned for a while, is that if you're personable, you get so much further in this industry, and I think that there should be a bigger focus on like, be yourself, be a fun person, it's kind of hard to teach, I guess, but be yourself and don't be afraid to let the personality out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that goes for both, not just podcasting, but also what comes with that is having that presence on social media. You don't want to be someone that you're not. You don't want to try to be, someone like Jared Carrabis, someone who's already built his own personality. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to try to be him. That'll never work. So that's good advice, I think, to people who are just coming up. So we can transition to some Red Sox talk now. We're recording this on Monday, July 31st, and that means the trade deadline is tomorrow at 6 p.m. on August 1st. I believe this show will be out probably either August 1st or 2nd, so Tuesday or Wednesday. So by the time it's out, the trade deadline may have passed already. So we'll start here. What are your thoughts on what the Red Sox have done so far with trading Kike, and they get that reliever back from the Giants? I'm not going to pronounce his name right. I believe it's Mauricio Jovera, but I might be very wrong. But
I think you nailed it.
Yeah, those are their two real moves so far, which means they haven't done a whole lot. So what are your takeaways from their activity, or I should say inactivity so far?
Yeah, that's the big takeaway, is that it's here. And we haven't heard much at this point, which is interesting. Getting anything in return for Kike is awesome. I don't know if those guys ever see the light of day, but my goodness, is that awesome that Heim was able to get something, because I think we all kind of expected it would be a DFA.
Absolutely, yeah.
So to get two human beings in return is definitely something. Yovera, I mean, when we're talking right now, he did give up the walk-off to Jock Peterson, but not earned runs. So do with that what you will.
Yeah, that game's more on the offense, I'd probably say. Both of those games are probably more on the offense.
Yeah, I think they're going to need more help. Rafi actually had a pretty interesting quote on Sunday where he was very straightforward. Not like him, almost bogey-esque, where he said, we've proven, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, like, we've proven ourselves that we can play with the best teams out there. We need pitching. We need help. I don't need to tell Heim that. He knows that. So that is some strong words coming from your de facto leader, the face of your franchise. I think it's pretty clear that they have arguably two guys that if you move, they are white flags. And that's, in my mind, Paxton and Verdugo.
Interesting. Okay. Because there have been Verdugo rumors over the last day or so. That's been kind of heating up a little bit.
Yeah, and kind of out of nowhere. I think everybody had said, like, obviously Duvall's getting traded. Obviously Duvall. And then, I don't want to put it solely on the back of Chris Cotillo, but he did say that he believes it's more likely Verdugo gets dealt.
Yeah.
Which I think comes from a place that the team likes him, but I don't know if the team likes him enough to pay him next year.
Right.
And I think that's what it is. I think it's just that, we like him. We don't have a problem with his play or with his off-field stuff or anything like that. I think it's just that there's a team that's probably more willing to pay him and we can get something in return.
Right.
So I would be pretty let down if they did that, but there's still an avenue in my mind that if you move Verdugo, you can still compete this year.
Yes.
I don't know if the same is true in moving Paxton. I think if you move Paxton,
you're already looking for a starter. I mean, they said flat out they want to add to the starting rotation, so you're going to trade one of your most dependable guys. Wouldn't make a whole lot of sense if you're trying to contend.
No. You would have to then be looking at two starters, and in reality, you could probably then use three, because right now getting two starters would not be a bad idea.
Yeah.
So if this lineup stays relatively the same, like I said, even subtracting Verdugo, and I'm trying not to let recency bias slip in there because I know he is in a slump, and I know that he's capable of being an all-star caliber player. We saw that in the first half this year.
Yep.
But this lineup minus Verdugo plus a starter and another reliever, and then you add all of your IL additions.
Right.
You add Story and Sale and Whitlock and Houck. I really like the team's chances. I don't think they need to do all too much, but I still have this overwhelming sense of dread that the deadline's going to come and we're all going to kind of look at each other and go like, that's it?
That's it? Yeah.
It's over?
Right.
Yeah. So I feel like a starter might be a little greedy.
Right.
Not greedy, but a little unrealistic. As much as I think we need it, I don't know if they do it.
What do you want to happen before the deadline? Obviously, pitching is probably the number one priority, but like any specific names that stand out at this point? Like, we've already seen guys like Jordan Montgomery go off the board. That was a guy I wanted personally, but any guys still out there that you want to see on this team after this deadline?
I think the only guy that I really had my eyes on, besides Montgomery, because Montgomery was on that list for me too.
Yeah.
The only guy beyond that is probably unrealistic, and I think that the team has said they're not taking calls on him, and it's Shohei Ohtani. No, it's Dylan Cease.
Yeah.
And what you'd have to give up for him would probably be a Verdugo plus some prospects.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I don't know. I also don't know how they feel about a guy that hasn't come up in their system. That I know that's a controllable piece and whatever, but giving up that much for a guy who they don't know all too well, it doesn't seem like the new Red Sox way. So it's unrealistic, but I would love that move. Beyond that, it's very much a I trust Heim mentality for me.
Is there any sort of in between there? Because obviously, getting a guy like Cease would be like a holy shit move. And then what we're at right now is just what everyone kind of, all the Bloom haters, I would say, are like, oh, see, he's not doing anything. He doesn't believe in this team. All he did was trade Kike. Yeah, that was a good trade, but I mean, he hasn't done anything else, and doesn't really have much of a good track record at the deadline. What's like, I guess, a realistic expectation of what to expect?
I think realistically, me and Steve said this on our last episode, I think a realistic place to be 48 hours from now is saying, like, oh, I've never heard of these guys. Like,
That's
who
fair.
are these two relievers we got? Let's look at them. Oh, he actually had a good year in 2017.
Yeah.
Oh, who's this guy? Oh, he's 31, but he was a rookie last year? Interesting. I think that's really what it's going to be. It's going to be two guys who you go like, huh, all right. And then, come late September, one of them is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anybody who falls into the category of, like, known name that isn't a holy shit move that the Sox go for.
Yeah.
I think if anything, they are really in the diamond in the rough business more than they are in the star business.
This does seem like another one of those years where they see all the guys that are coming off the injured list as additions. Like, they had that year, I think, it was last year with Chris Sale. They were like, oh, we got Sale back. That's our big trade deadline addition. And now it's kind of happening again with more guys.
I think last year, though, that was kind of BS. Because
Right.
you needed more. And, like,
100%.
you were floundering last year. And, like, your lineup wasn't getting it done. But this year, it's like your lineup, there were long spurts where you had, one of the best offenses in baseball, or damn near it. And now you're in a spot where your players are saying, we need pitching. So I think it's clearer, and I think you're closer, and I think you've proven more this year. So I hate your IL being your trade deadline acquisitions, but if a team went out and got Trevor Story, Chris Sale, Garrett Whitlock, Tanner Houck at the deadline, you'd be like, oh my God, this team is going in. So I think this year, more than any other that I can remember anyway, it's legit to say that your IL is your trade line acquisition. Hopefully not all of it, because I think you do need another bullpen arm, maybe another legit starter, because as much as Houck and Whitlock have been starters, they're not natural-born starters,
Yeah.
They've both been shoved into that role, so having the leisure to put one of those guys in the pen would be huge, but beyond that, I don't think you need all too much.
Yeah, and the outlook on this team is it seems so much more positive than it was this time last year. So the fact that you have a competitive team that is in the race and now you're getting those additions and there's momentum there, I feel like that goes a long way. It has been a more positive season, like I said. What are some of your favorite storylines from this season so far? Or if you had to pick one, I guess, what is the storyline?
I love Yoshi doing what Yoshi's doing. I'm tired of people correcting me on Yoshi. All right, let me say that.
Yeah, it's Yoshi.
Okay,
I know.
Listen.
I know he wants to be Masa. We all say Yoshi.
It's one tweet from Jared. That's it. And, like, I've never asked him, but, like, I'm gonna ask him soon. Like, when did Masa say that to you, or who said that?
Yeah.
Because I think we've ran with it a little bit. Anyway, that's so not the point of your question. I think Yoshida, like, proving people wrong, man, and the whole rival execs thing and the overpay and the, all that. That has been really, really fun to watch. I've also loved that Justin Turner has, like, made himself into, like, a cornerstone. I don't know how else to say it. That he feels like he's just been on the Sox for 10 years.
Arguably the team's MVP this year. I mean, it just is what it is.
Yeah, I love Casas finding his. That's another name that I get. Casas. He finally said that we can say Casas. I love that Casas has found himself, and that there's not even a batting average argument anymore. That you can't say, like, there's going to be dudes who are like, well, he's batting 220, and then, you got to say, well, if you look at his on base, and if you look at his slug, and if you look at his expected BABIP, you don't have to do that anymore. You can just say, like, over the last 2 months he's batting 360. Is that good?
Right. Yeah.
So
Now it's just about getting against left-handers. That's really all that's left to unlock in his game, and then
And Cora has said this year or this week, I mean, that he doesn't plan on using Cassis or Duran, who's the other fun storyline,
right,
against lefties anytime soon. Don't agree with that. Don't understand that. Like, it's time. They're major league players. Let them play. They're the best players on the team.
Do you think that's kind of, in Duran's case, do you think that's sort of a nod of like, Duvall's not going anywhere. We want Duvall against lefties. We want Duran against righties. Like, that's the way we're going forward? Or do you think it was that kind of message?
At first, I thought it was a prove it thing. That it was like, if you want to play against lefties, show us, Yeah. And in, late game bullpen situations, when you get those ABs, make the most of them, then we'll talk.
Yeah.
But he kind of has. And so I don't know. I mean, obviously, it's not the same as his numbers against righties, but they're not abysmal numbers.
Right.
It sounds more like a mentality thing that, like, the team just has the mentality that they're not going to do that. That he's a rookie lefty, so he does not face lefties.
Yeah.
And I wish that was not the case because I would love to see them, develop in real time. And I think this is a good time for it. And I don't think that, like, what you get from Duvall in those spots is, like, massively better than what Duran is doing. And up until very recently, we've all believed that Duvall is, like, the trade piece.
Yeah,
so,
I still think that, but it doesn't. It's definitely less than it was. Like, he seemed like an obvious trade candidate like 2 weeks ago. Now it's like, oh, he might be staying.
And when that's the case, and it might still be the case, then why? It makes the move even more puzzling.
Yeah.
It's like, well, then if you're keeping Duran, and he's going to be the everyday guy very soon, why shelter him from left-handed pitching? I don't necessarily understand that.
I think it's apparently it's just the approach that they took with Rafael Devers in 2018, and now they're just like, okay, that approach worked with him. Let's try it with these guys too. But I don't know. I'm in the same boat as you. I think just throw them into the fire. They've been playing well. That's the next test.
Yeah, and I think that at some point they're going to have to either way. And it's like, when Devers did it, he was 21.
Yeah.
Like, Duran's 26. Like, he doesn't need to be babied into left-handed pitching.
Definitely not.
He's seen it. And Casas is like such a what's the word I'm looking for? He's a freak about his eye. So why would you, I don't know, give him experience in seeing from the left side? Whatever. My other favorite storyline is Duran because what a turnaround. That's probably the biggest one because
that's my favorite too. Yeah.
What a turnaround. I didn't think that it was possible. I thought that he had sullied his reputation for good last year.
I wrote him off. After all that stuff went down last year, I said, all right, I'm done with this guy. The way he handled his post-game interview, I'm like, all right, done, move on. In the offseason, find a trade, whatever. He won me over this year. And I feel like I don't think there's anyone with a negative opinion on him anymore, but if you're still holding on to last year, it's time to move on. That's pretty much it.
Can you imagine if they did move him in the offseason?
And then he did this.
And then he did this. Somewhere, like he went to San Diego and did this. Right. San Diego's a dumb option. They have enough.
You know what everyone would say though? He just couldn't handle Boston.
Exactly.
He just needed a market like San Diego or like Pittsburgh or something. And
I'm telling you, these guys don't like playing for Chaim. They don't like playing for him. Alex Cora's lost his clubhouse. If he had him, Duran would be doing that here. That's
Boston
what
isn't for everybody. Boston just isn't for everybody. Ship him with Bobby. Get him out of here. They'll both hit fucking 400 with Pittsburgh.
Is Bob going to be moved? That's the other thing. Because Bob has 58 homers this year in Worcester.
I thought so. I wrote a piece for NBC Sports Boston. He was one of the trade deadline guys that I wrote like, hey, I know no one's thinking about Bobby right now, but you could probably get something for him, right? Because with what he's doing in AAA,
pretty good for him. He's a major leaguer.
It's like Michael Chavis when you got something for him when you sent him to Pittsburgh. So why can't you get something for Bobby? That's what it reminds me of.
I think Bobby is a really, really good piece to package with something. Like if you're trying to get a controllable starter, you tell me that like a middle of the road prospect and hate to say it, Duvall. Let's say Duvall instead of Verdugo.
Okay.
A middle-of-the-road prospect, Duvall and Bobby Dahlbeck. That doesn't get you somebody
get you
with
something.
like a year or two of control, a middle-of-the-road, a 3 or 4 starter with
Yeah.
a year and a half, 2.5. I think that's totally realistic.
So, if say nothing happens at the deadline between now and then, this
Mm-hmm.
team is what it is. What is your outlook on this team going forward to the rest of the season? And then looking beyond this season, the long-term view of just Chaim Bloom's Red Sox. I guess a combination of both of those things.
I think the rest of the season, I think it's pretty much a coin flip right now whether or not they make it into the postseason.
Yeah.
I think that they should, but it's a matter of if they show up. Like when the offense goes cold, it goes really, really cold. So if they can look like themselves, I think they make it in. And when they get in, who knows? Because they've shown that they can beat really good teams. So could they go on a run where they beat, Cleveland, followed by Texas? Like, could that I totally see that's possible. You get into the dance and who knows,
Right.
But years in years future, I think is when things get really, really fun. I think 2 years from now, 3 years from now, I hate to say that because that doesn't sound all too exciting. But realistically, next year, end of next year, I think that you start to see what it's going to look like.
The vision, yeah.
Yeah, like, you have Yoshida, Duran, whoever your other outfielder is, if they extend for Dugo, let's say, and then your infield being Devers, Story, Meyer, Casas, and then Bayo has developed. Wong is here. Like, I really don't hate. Like, you just need more arms. This team needs like a full rotation, and I really like where they go. And then there's all sorts of other prospects that are going to be coming up around that time. Blaze, Rafaela, who I think they should trade, but they probably won't. So, I like the outlook going forward.
If they miss the postseason this year, do you see Bloom's job being in jeopardy, or do you think we have another year of this where there's two sides here? You got the Bluminati, and then you got the people who are a little bit more realistic, and I guess three sides: realistic, the Bluminati, and then you got like the people who are like, he's not that bad. Come on.
I don't think this year is it.
Okay.
I will say, on paper, it does look terrible.
Right.
To be out of the postseason for as many years as they have, and just be the record under Bloom. I get it. It looks bad. But I think ownership had to be aware this was going to happen when they brought in Chaim Bloom, because they brought him in for this reason, like rebuild the farm system, get us under the luxury tax. Like, we get the big extension, but then we're going to be, pinching pennies along the way. That's why they brought him in. So I don't think it would be realistic for ownership or whoever to be upset with him for doing what he was brought in to do, and then kick him out before the fulfillment of his vision.
Why did you kick me out?
Why did I kick you out?
Yeah.
That's the saddest little thing I've ever heard. I didn't kick you out, buddy. I just need a minute, okay? Daddy's doing a show. Okay.
Can I watch the show?
You can watch the show. Okay. We're getting a special guest.
Yeah, we got a guest. That's fine.
All right. Sebastian's making
Special
a debut.
guest.
He's never been on
Hey,
ITM,
Sebastian.
but he's coming in here. Say hi.
Hey, Sebastian.
Hi. You nervous? Now, like you were just saying earlier today, it would be kind of foolish for them to kick Chaim out
Yeah.
before
He's been
they
saying
see
this
the
all day.
fulfillment. Yeah, before they see the fulfillment of his vision. Because how stupid would it be? You get rid of him, and then Casas blossoms, Meyer blossoms, Rafaela, Miguel Blaze, like all these guys, like turn into what he's been building, and then you're going to look at the Red Sox. They're going to be the Bloom Sox, and you're going to have Tom, Dick, or Harry sitting in his chair.
Yeah.
And that guy is going to look incredible because he got handed a team that was built by Chaim. So I don't think it makes much sense to get rid of him yet. I do think the following year, like if you're then given, I mean, that would be what?
Daddy.
5 years, right? 5 years?
Yeah.
At that point, it's like, all right, brother, We've given you 5 years, and
Yeah.
we're still struggling to make it in here. That's not who we are. So that's around the time I think that the job comes into question. I think the more interesting one is if Cora wants to stick around with a middling team. Because I don't.
That's
the answer
going
is
to
I
be a
probably don't
very
think he will.
interesting question. I think that's an under the radar storyline. I think heading into the into the off season, it will be a very under the radar storyline.
And
so
and Kike is gone. Sorry, real quick. But Kike leaving, I think, plays into it too. Because
Yeah.
I mean, that
For
was
sure.
his guy, and like to lose one of his guys, and then have to go out and if they miss the postseason this year, like that's pretty tough. So
he has a take. He has a take.
What are those? Those are chips. And the Sox have a lot of trade chips, and they
Chips,
should
that's
cash
what-
them
yeah.
in. I think this team is worth betting on.
That's a good take.
Yes. There we go.
Good takes. Well, how does this season end? We'll wrap up there. What's the official prediction? The official Joey Copponi prediction for the Red Sox this season.
88 wins,
Okay.
6 seed. They get the final
All right.
wild card spot.
Okay.
And they fall in the DS.
I like it. Would you consider that a successful season?
Yes.
Okay.
Compared
All right.
to what we expected, yes.
Yeah, I would
Especially
agree with you there.
Especially if the Yankees are in last spot. I don't know why that matters to me. I know that the rivalry is dead to a lot of folks. I
should
love
still
every
matter.
day. Every day I take a screenshot of the standings. I just love seeing it. I love it. I follow
Yeah.
all the Yankees pages. I go through. I wish I had a Yankees burner, but I don't. Maybe I will now.
Yeah,
That would be a
good idea.
successful season.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think a lot of people expected 81, missed the postseason, and then everyone's talking about this team being a failure heading into the next year. But I think it's progress, and yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there, Joey. I appreciate you coming on. As always, it's a pleasure, and yeah, best of luck to you and Steve and ITM going forward. I think big things are ahead for you guys, so best of luck.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate you having me on. And yeah, let's talk soon. I appreciate you having me.